folks, Scott here with my 10-card one-kit video featuring the Love from Lizi February 2019 card kit. This was a beautiful card kit that featured a heavy Art Deco theme with peacocks. Great fun, beautiful, not a spot of pink in this whole kit. Of course, I did go through and made A2 card bases out of all of the card stock included in the kit. Let's see how this kit inspired me this month. So I reached for that great Peacock stamp in our stamp set. I stamped that on some Bristol Smooth cardstock using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I was going to reach for my Zig Clean Color markers when I remembered that I had gotten some new watercolor mediums for Christmas and for my birthday. For Christmas, my sister-in-law got me this set of King Art dual tip brush pens. These are very much like Tombow markers, much less expensive than Tombow markers. These have a felt brush tip at one end, a short little nib marker on the other end. I thought I'd give these a try first and see how they did as far as coloring on Bristol Smooth cardstock. This is our first Peacock. I liked how these came out. I actually have a lot of color options with this 48 pen set, and the colors moved around very nicely on this Bristol Smooth cardstock. I was able to get some nice blends. So then for my birthday in December, I got this set of 40 Stabilo watercolor markers, high brilliance and color intensity. These, I think, are German. I got these from some of my oldest friends for my birthday this year. They're very thin markers. They only have one tip, and that is a very fine nib tip. No brush tip on the other end. I thought these would work really good for detail coloring. And here's our Peacock colored with Stabilo pens. Very nice. I was very impressed with those Stabilo pens. They moved really very well on this Bristol Smooth cardstock. Now, on all of those feathers, you're seeing some reflection there. I used some glaze pen to go around the eyes of those feathers there. That's why the shading is there. So that's not the markers at all. So I got some nice shading there on our peacock's back. Some really nice shading in the feathers there. Very pleased with those Stabilo pens. So then, of course, I did reach for my Zig Clean Color markers. Now, I only have a 32 set, so I really don't have a ton of colors. I really love using these. If you've watched my videos, you know I color almost everything with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. And so for our third Peacock, this is the one colored with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. Of course, those markers move so nicely on this Bristol Smooth cardstock. Really great blendings, really great colors. I think all three of these gave us really, really nice looking peacocks. That is one gorgeous stamp. I knew I was going to have to fussy cut those peacocks out, and I was not really looking forward to that. So I put the colored peacocks aside and moved on. I wanted to see how that peacock stamp would do with embossing. So for our first card on a black card base, we've got a With Love Peacock in gold on this black card base. This worked very nicely. We really were able to maintain a lot of that detail in the peacock there. Now, I did try using the Love from Lizi Emerald City embossing powder. That's this here. I also tried the Love from Lizi Golden Crown embossing powder. This is more of an antique gold, so especially when it's not reflecting, it doesn't have a very strong presence on this black cardstock. So I just went with my plain old gold embossing powder for this. It really reads well, even if it's not directly reflecting. I, of course, stamped all this using my Versamark ink and embossed this using the Ranger Ultra Fine Gold Embossing Powder 2 of the corner stamps on the right side here. I then added 1 strip of the Love from Lizi gold mirror peel-offs. These we got in the May of 2018 kit. I couldn't help but reach for those with this card. I like this a lot. It's really very straightforward, very simple. A 1-layer wonder card, just 1 layer on this, using that great sentiment from the stamp set. It looks almost oriental. I tell you, if you had some big red enamel accents on this, it would be very oriental. With love, that's a nice introduction to this great Art Deco kit and that gorgeous Peacock stamp. Now, there was one cut apart on our 12 by 12 cut apart sheet that really caught my eye. You probably know exactly which one I'm talking about. On the cream card base, we've got "Time spent laughing is time spent with the gods." I had never heard that before. This is the first time I've heard this Japanese proverb. I love that. I think it's delightful and is a lovely sentiment for a card. I, of course, cut that out from the cut-apart sheet, and since the outline decoration was in teal, I took the teal mirror peel-offs and added those over the top of the printed edges. So it goes all the way around the frame there, and I did add little strips of those peel-offs on the short lines in between the frames here, just for a little extra bling on that. And I did take my glossy accents and covered up the letters on the laughing. So there's a little bit of dimension, some good shine on that laughing. I didn't want to busy this up with some of the pattern paper in the kit, so I reached for that lovely embossing folder and embossed the card front directly with that embossing folder. It embosses the whole thing. Of course, when you emboss cardstock like that, it gets a little wonky and warpy, so I did put a piece of cardstock on the back of that, glued that down just to hold everything flat on front. I took my Orange Marmalade Distress Oxide ink and lightly sponged some of that ink on the top of this embossing just to give it a little extra depth and dimension. I mounted the cut apart on that card front with some foam tape, added a couple more of the peel-offs down the edges, right along the edge of that embossing. And then I felt we were still missing something, so I grabbed those champagne gold gems from the kit, and I stuck one on every bottom point of those leaf clusters. Those added a really nice spot of bling to this card and really highlights the pattern on that embossing folder. Really pretty. Time spent laughing is time spent with the gods. Of course, I couldn't leave that well enough alone and had to add my own "Wishing you a joyous birthday." So I turned this into a laughing birthday card. I, of course, turned to my Silhouette software to create this sentiment and use the Perpetua Titling MT font. That was about as close as I could find to the little block printing on the front of this cut apart. So that's what we used. There'll be links to all of these fonts I use at my website at cardcutups.com. A lovely birthday card. Time spent laughing is time spent with the gods. Have a joyous birthday. I love those crystals on that embossing folder. Just perfect. Now, I noticed one of the ladies on the cut-apart sheet seemed particularly proud, and I thought she would pair up with the "Atta Girl" sentiment stamp very nicely. So on a navy card base, we get "Atta Girl." I really like this. I love that lady. She looks so proud. She looks like she deserves an "Atta Girl" by all means. I cut this polka dotted dark pattern paper into a 4x4 inch rectangle, glued it down to the center of my navy card base. and then trimmed the cut apart down, following very closely to the outline of the frame on that. Gave it a little extra interest, a little extra dimension, and it also shrank it down enough so that I could mat it on this piece of the mint green shimmer paper. So the cut apart is foam taped up on the green shimmer paper that's glued down to the pattern paper, glued down directly to the card base. For the sentiment and that great Art Deco frame, I stamped and embossed those using Versamark ink and the Simon Says Stamp Steel Navy embossing powder. Now, I don't have the Love from Lizi warm navy embossing powder, so I turned to this Steel Navy embossing powder, and it came out really nice. I like that. I stamped that and embossed that on some vellum. I stuck another piece of vellum behind it. So I sent a second piece of vellum through my Xyron sticker maker and glued both pieces together just to make it a little bit more opaque. Then I fussy cut that out and added it to the top of the card using a couple of foam strips that are right behind those two busy bars left and right. With the two pieces of vellum glued together, it gave enough rigidity to this vellum piece that I could mount it to the card front using a little bit of foam tape. So there's a little extra dimension there. Really nice. Fits just nicely on her front there. And of course, I've got a couple of spaces on the left and right to add that great die, that straight line die from our kit. I did take a piece of that mint specialty cardstock and added some Stick-It to the back of it. I thought I would make my life a little bit easier and put some adhesive on the back of these fine die cuts before I tried to use them. I even used some wax paper between the die cut and the cardstock to try and help release the die cut. It didn't help very much. These are really, really tiny, tiny pieces, but with a little care, they came out of the die very nicely. I was able to stick them down to this card front thanks to the Stick-It on the back. Nice and permanent. Atta girl. And of course, we had to add congratulations. Now, I was thrilled. I just happened to have this font in my font file. It's the exact same font that's used for all the sentiments in this kit. That is the Andes font, and I, of course, put that together using my Silhouette software. A big congratulations card. She certainly looks like she deserves every pat on the back that she gets. Really nice, plenty of shine between that specialty cardstock and that embossing on the vellum. Really, really sharp. I like that a lot. I was so pleased to have an attaboy sentiment in our stamp set. At last, we get some equal time going here. It tickled me to no end, but unfortunately, there are no images of guys in this entire card kit. No fellas, no guys, no boys. It's all ladies as far as images go. So I decided to use that attaboy stamp and just go with the Art Deco theme. So on a white card base, we get our attaboy card. Strictly Art Deco for this one. Now, those gold mirror peel-offs were still sitting on my desk. I couldn't resist. I took that Black Glimmer specialty cardstock that we got in the kit. I taped that down to my glass media mat right on the lines and started applying bunches and bunches and bunches of peel-offs. I actually just did the inside 3 squares first, or rectangles if you like. I actually laid out all 4 sides of all 3 rectangles, with the outside being the thin peel-offs, the middle one being the medium peel-offs, and then the inside square being the thin peel-offs again. I ran all of those off the edges of the card so that I could go in afterwards and start mitering the corners. Now, these thin frames were easy to miter. You're just combining the outside frame and the inside frame at the miter points instead of keeping it all on the outside. And then for the medium thickness peel-off frame in the center, it has those corner boxes that I just added little pieces of the medium peel-offs to the corners and mitered all 3 edges to make those boxes. This was a little fussy and took a little time, but I enjoyed it so much. I did take that corner stamp and using Versamark ink, stamped that 4 times on the middle of this glimmer cardstock. I brought the edges of those right together, but I actually missed those last lines. There's a little gap between those last lines there. That's why the gems are there. They're covering up that little gap, but that made a perfect kind of partial frame that the Attaboy fit inside of. This, of course, is embossed with that same gold embossing powder. Attaboy, a really nice Art Deco frame. I actually did the last wide peel-off frame at the very end once I had done all of the other framing. Nothing on the inside of this card. I figure I could have lots of opportunities to use a card like this. So pleased with that Attaboy sentiment stamp. So that's 3 of the 5 sentiments in the kit so far. Let's tackle that Girls' Night Out sentiment with this next card. On the black card base again, we've got Girls' Night Out. It's sticker time. I went to the sticker sheet and I fussy cut these ladies from that long strip of ladies in the middle of our sticker sheet, moved the sticky from the back and added some foam tape to the back of them so that I could add them to my card front with a little dimension. Now I was going to add a strip of pattern paper, but realized that these little small sentiment stickers would work every bit as good. So I used 4 of them on the right, 4 of them on the left, staggered them around a bit. You actually get the splendid and the swanky. Those are right in the middle of the card. I did take some more of those gold peel-off to run along the edges of those stickers. I cut out a piece of that yellow damask pattern paper. That's 3 inches wide by 2 5/8 inch tall. I went ahead and stamped and embossed the Girls' Night Out on that. That again is with that steel navy embossing powder. Really great, works with this perfectly. Then I took our corner die from our die set and cut out 2 corners using that textured gold specialty paper. That's that textured gold specialty paper. That die cut really well with that die. Since I didn't use stick it on the backs of those, I was a little concerned about getting them to stick down. So I actually glued the little corners of those die cuts right down to my pattern paper, just the corner of each one. Tried to get them lined up nice and square so that they would lay down perfectly when I added that to my card front. I then took my spray glue, I have some Elmer's spray glue, and used that as the adhesive on the back of this whole piece, this whole yellow piece and the 2 corner pieces, and used that adhesive to lay that piece down on our card front. Really nice. I added the ladies to the front of that yellow background. They're extending just a little bit beyond the edges on both sides. Added some of the gems on the top right and the bottom left. And then I took one of those sprigs of pearls, those pearl sprays that we got in our embellishment bags, and just put a little line of those underneath that sentiment. Kind of looks like pearl necklace, actually. I think these ladies look like they are ready to hit the town, and I love the fact that they're all kind of looking at you. Now, this definitely seems like an invitation, so I did go to my Silhouette software and created this on the inside. And yes, you're right. There's a little bit of a pun here. Why not join us? Now, this is just a piece of my Staples Plano ivory cardstock that is die cut with one of my Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies, and I printed this up again using the Andes font and the Perpetua font for the information, and I paired those up with a little image of wine glasses that I happen to have in my stash. Girls' Night Out. Why not join us? I will tell you, I had a hard time digging up puns for this kit. There's not a lot of Art Deco puns. There's not a lot of Peacock puns that you can tell in mixed company. But I thought this was a fun play on words for a really nice invitation. This is fairly straightforward, pretty simple. You could easily create a number of these cards to invite your best girlfriends out for a night of whining and dining. Nice invitation card. Girls' night out. So while I was doing my Peacock research prior to receiving my kit, I ran across an Aesop fable called The Jay and the Peacock that actually inspired this next card. I hadn't used that lovely feather stamp yet in the stamp set. If anything, it looks more detailed than the Peacock is. So those are what inspired this next card on a white card base. It's not only fine feathers that make fine birds. Aesop. And there's that great feather stamp, stamped 4 times. You know, I've been enjoying using my little homemade wreath builder template quite a bit in the last few months, and thought I would pull it out for this too. I thought that feather stamp would work really well, and I knew that you could stamp an arc on the 2 sides of a card and achieve more of an oval or a frame than just a simple round wreath. It's really simple if you have a template or a fake template. I actually took a whole card base, put it in the portrait position in my wreath template. I used Stampin' Up! Emerald Envy ink. Positioned the stamp in the top left corner of our cardstock, stamped that in place. Then instead of turning it 45 degrees, go ahead and we'll turn our cardstock a full 90 degrees to get our second impression. Of course, I am double or triple stamping these. This is an old ink pad from a number of years ago, so it takes a few tries to get a really good impression. Now we're going to turn another 90 degrees, but instead of keeping the top inside our template, we're going to bring the bottom inside the template. So this is putting it back in the same place that we started, just on the other side of the card. A couple of stamps for our third impression, then we're going to go 90 degrees again for our 4th and final stamp. And that's our 4th impression. That's how you can use your terrific little wreath builder template to create an actual frame on a full card front. I like that very much. I love that feather stamp. So detailed, really, really nice. All I did was add some of our glitter drops from the kit on the top and bottom here. I also dug out the Wedgwood Blue Nouveau crystal drops that we got, I think, in the November 18 kit. I dug those out and used those for the little dots in the eye of the feather. A really straightforward, very simple, again, a 1-layer wonder card. It's not only fine feathers that make fine birds. I think that's a very interesting way to tell somebody that they're perfect just the way they are. I, of course, created that sentiment using my Silhouette software. That, again, is the Andes font along with the Perpetua font. You see, I actually print out the whole card shape on regular typing paper. Then I add my card to the top of that, tape down the leading edge, and send it back into my printer so it will print right on the cardstock. I'll have a link to this fable on my website too at cardcutups.com. You can go have that fable read to you. Now, working with that feather stamp made me think of that special birthday gift we got from Lizi last September on Love from Lizi's. I believe it was her 2nd birthday. Lizi treated all of the subscribers to a peacock feather die. So this was our little surprise present in Lizi's September 18 kit. I haven't had a chance to use this yet, but I thought this was the perfect opportunity to use it. And I also had some of those extra add-ons in the kit, specifically that A4 satin card pack. So for our next card, on an aqua card base, we get, ooh, baby, this card is just practically lit up. I took that Love from Lizi Peacock feather die, and I cut the 5 sheets of satin cardstock, the 5 blue and green sheets. There's one sheet that's gold. I used the 5 sheets of blue and green, and I cut 2 feathers out of each sheet. And I actually used that brushed gold vinyl for the heart eyes inside each one of those feathers. Just put a little tape behind the opening and die cut this vinyl with the same peacock feather die. Pulled the heart out of that for the inside. So all of those hearts are little brushed gold hearts. I was determined to tackle that black deco mesh and use it on a card. So I took that nice piece of gold mirror specialty paper and die cut that with one of my stitched rectangle dies. And then I wrapped that deco mesh around my card using plenty of score tape on the backs and score tape down along the edges of that ribbon. Really nice. There's actually some nice shine on that ribbon. Not only is it a great texture, but it brings some shine too. I did die cut this piece of pattern paper. That's that colorful damask pattern paper. I die cut that with another Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I did add another gold frame of peel-offs around the outside of that. And then I took all 10 of those die cuts and gathered them up into a little fan, kind of replicating a peacock's tail when he's in full display. A little double bow on the bottom here using the royal blue ribbon from the kit. Everything is mounted to this card front flat, and then the peacock feathers are attached with glue and with some foam squares behind their heads. Really pretty. Oh, the shine, I just don't think the shine and glow of this card will really read on the camera, but in real life, it really is just gorgeous. Now, you know, I'm not one to create cards that don't have a sentiment or don't have a purpose. So, of course, on the inside of this card, we've got Show Your Colors, again, created with my Silhouette software and that great Andes font. Show Your Colors, another great encouragement card. Okay, I've made you wait long enough. I finally broke down and fussy cut all 3 of my colored peacocks. I did use my craft knife. I'm much more adept with an X-Acto blade, so that is my tool of choice when I'm fussy cutting an image out. Our first peacock card here, we are on the aqua card base, and we've got Just Because. Now this is that peacock that's colored with the King Art dual tip brushes, the Tombow knockoff brushes. Really nice. I took that all blue square gridded pattern paper and fussy cut 2 strips of the squares apart and used those on the 2 sides of my card base here. I then outlined the sawtooth edge with the medium peel-offs. I grabbed a strip of those peacock feathers from that peacock feather like wallpaper pattern paper, cut that out. I added a piece of vellum over the top of that by sending it through my Xyron sticker maker and gluing it right down to the front of that pattern paper just to mute that pattern a little bit so it didn't compete with my peacock on front. I did add a couple more strips of the peel-offs down the sides of that and then glued that straight down to the card base. Of course, this peacock is then mounted up on the front of the card with some thin foam squares. I did use my glaze pens to add little blue circles around the eyes, a little black dot for the peacock's eye. Really pretty. I really like this. Of course, Just Because isn't enough for me. We've got to do Just Because I Love You. And that turns this into a very unconventional Valentine card. Just Because I stamped in black just to match the black stamping on the peacock. And I did do a little embossing on that so it'd have a little bit of shine, just clear embossing on the VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Just Because I Love You. That's our peacock number 1. Beautiful stamp and a lovely Valentine card. So for our second peacock, we're on the cream card base and we've got Flock, yeah. There we go. There's a real Scott pun for you this month. This peacock is the Zig Clean Color Real Brush Peacock, colored with the Zig markers. I added another strip of that peacock feather pattern paper down the left side here. No vellum over the top of that, but yes, I did add some of the lovely teal peel-offs on both sides of that. I did send the card base through my printer to print up the Flock, yeah. Again, that's the Andes font. I was so excited to find that font. I then took and snipped one of the tops of the little black feathers in the kit and stuck it behind our tail of our peacock. I also took a bunch of those white pearl sprays and trimmed out the pearls with just a little bit of the plastic between them and set them at the tips of all 10 of those feathers. A nice bit of shine with those, a great bit of dimension with those, and then of course that feather peeking out on all of the sides of the tail. There's even a little tuft of feathers sticking out of the crown on the top of the peacock's head. Flock, yeah! But there's a real pun for us this month. So for our last card this month on the Navy card base, we get our final peacock. And that die cut frame. Now that frame is actually die cut from the brushed gold vinyl. Yes, that's from the vinyl. That vinyl cuts very well with all of the dies. The only tip I have in using that vinyl is if you're not using transfer paper or anything and are just trying to handle it with your hands, this stuff is super sticky and will stick to you all over the place, especially those really, really thin lines from those die cuts. So if you lick your fingers and keep them just a little bit damp, you can actually handle that vinyl very easy and it's not going to stick all over you. And of course, your spittle will just dry up and you can burnish this down to your card base. Now, I had actually cut this die and attached it right to the center of that white glimmer specialty paper, and then it sat on my desk for a long time while I worked on other cards. I couldn't quite figure out how to use this. I kept thinking I needed to put some kind of a sentiment in the center of that frame. I didn't know what sentiment. Now that was, of course, on that white glimmer specialty paper, but I did want to see that navy blue cardstock on the front as well. Instead of just trimming the specialty cardstock down and showing a little blue frame around it, I thought we'd do a little bit of a reverse frame. And I took my 2 Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies and stuck them both together to cut a frame. I then placed them on that cardstock and lined it up right in the center so I could get 3 usable pieces from that white glimmer cardstock. So I actually glued down what you would think would be the throwaway piece. I glued that down to the cardstock. I actually used that extra piece as a guide to show me where to glue down that center rectangle. Glued that down to the card base as well. Really nice shine to that and really nice presence when there's no light shining at all. This is actually the peacock that was colored with the Stabilo pens. Really bright, really colorful. I love this card. I think it's beautiful. Again, I'm not one to leave a card without a sentiment. So on the inside of our 10th card, our last peacock card, we get Be Proud. Again, that's printed on my writing surface using that Andes font. A lovely, lovely peacock stamp. I think these last 3 peacock cards really demonstrate that the time and energy and patience I put into coloring them and fussy cutting them out was worth every moment of my time. I love all 3 of those cards. I love all of these cards. It's a great, beautiful card kit. So that's my 10 cards featuring the Love from Lizi February 2019 card kit. I, of course, have all sorts of leftovers. I only used 5 different sheets of the pattern paper. I used a little bit of all of the specialty cardstock, including that green glimmer specialty cardstock. I actually did use that brushed gold Oracal vinyl. Of course, I have a good amount of peel-offs left. Love that teal color. I used a few of the cut-aparts. I used a few of the stickers. I used most of the embellishments, but I didn't get to those wood veneer feathers. I did actually try watercoloring one of them. It came out okay, but I really just didn't feel like the wood was going along with my high-tech Art Deco look for this kit. I used some of that black deco mesh. I didn't use any sequins. I felt like with all of the peel-offs and the jewels and everything, the sequins were a little bit of overkill, although I love that sequin mix and it's gorgeous. I'm sure I'll get a lot of use out of it in years to come. I did use some of the Nouveau drops. I, of course, used the embossing folder, and I am proud to claim that I used every one of the stamps and every one of the dies in these 10 cards. All of these supplies will find loving homes in my stash. Lizi continues to spark my imagination month after month with unique themes and interesting embellishments, tons of supplies that almost beg you to think outside of the normal card-making box. Of course, this kit did sell out in almost record time, but there are a few of the add-ons, including the cardstock extras that I got, that are still available at Love from Lizi. If you go shopping at Love from Lizi or want to get in on the fun and become a subscriber, please use my link when you shop at Lizi. It is in the description down below. I had a really great time with this kit. I used a little bit of everything, but not a lot of anything, unless you want to count that Peacock stamp. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I hope you enjoy these cards. Let me know which ones you like best. Please like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with peacocks. And happy crafting. If you'd like more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.